Chapter 23, Nahezra. In the wizarding world, the concept of blood is deeply embedded in society. Terms such as pure blood, half-blood, and muggle-born are commonly used and widely understood. Many purebloods, as well as some half-bloods, believe that the more magical blood a wizard possesses, the more powerful they are. Among humans, this belief is both false and partially true. Muggle-born wizards are at a clear disadvantage. They learn of magic much later than their peers. They must absorb not only the standard wizarding curriculum, but also adjust to an entirely unfamiliar world. As a result, they tend to perform more poorly than pure-blood and half-blood students. Subjects such as potions, herbology, and runes are purely knowledge-based. This knowledge is not gained solely through books. Much of it is absorbed through experience and informal exposure. Inquisitive minds may acquire it in passing from their families or communities. Even at Hogwarts, one of the most muggle-born friendly schools in Europe, an entire quarter of the student body is openly hostile to their presence. The pureblood dogma is incorrect. While many believe that magic is internal, this is not the case. Magic exists externally. It is a force that surrounds all living beings and is harnessed by both magical creatures and humans. Although magical creatures exhibit slight variations in how this energy is managed, all magical beings generally draw from external sources to fuel their abilities. The exhaustion and fatigue experienced by magic wielders originates from within. The magic flows through conduits in the body. These conduits are imperfect. Some barriers to magic are psychological, others are genetic. All human beings draw from the same magical source. No wizard is inherently more powerful than another by virtue of blood. In magic, emotional and mental states determine the control and precision of magical flow. Even minimal self-doubt can cripple a wizard before a duel begins. Most important, however, is knowledge. Knowledge of spells, knowledge of dueling, and knowledge of magical theory and its effects. Purebloods were stronger and appeared to be more magically gifted. This was because of the pure hubris powering them. Half-bloods and muggle-born wizards were stronger due to pure spite and willpower. This was a powerful driving force as well, the need to be better, the need to be stronger. In humans, your confidence and your willpower played the strongest role in how powerful you will be. In the animal kingdom, magical subspecies were superior in every way to their mundane counterparts. No amount of hubris, confidence, or bravery could bridge that gap. Eisen openly revealed himself to the Albanian forest for days, and the first entity he managed to attract was the last one that would see him alive. Eisen had not a drop of magical blood in him, and the serpent currently playing games with his limited awareness knew that. She had not had this much fun in a while, but she was growing bored with the predictable responses from the baby. "Hello, my name is Eisen. I know you can hear me. Why won't you come out?" She refused to know him as Eisen. She just replaced the word Eisen with baby in her head. He was a little baby, a hatchling which managed to scare an entire forest of snakes. She sensed the snakes far away, eagerly waiting for her demise. They did not know what she knew about Eisen. They feared an idiot. Every time the great serpent feinted the presence of a snake somewhere in the distance, the small snake would repeat that line like some sort of human automaton. Was this her great usurper? Was this who her followers feared? She considered the merits of another great cull. The quality of followers always improved after she eradicated the lot of them. The mundane snake showed no self-preservation instincts, no sign of self-awareness. She was positioned above the oblivious snake, stalking him and feeding him fabricated signals of other snakes for over an hour at this point. She did it again, testing whether Eisen would finally notice something strange happening. For this last one, she made it blatantly obvious that someone was toying with his senses. She simulated the scent of a snake she saw a few times before. A naga, a very rare and very powerful creature. They did not spend time in places such as this, and the great serpent traveled great distances to meet their colony. "Hello, my name is Eisen. I know you can hear me. Why won't you come out?" The little respect she had for the snake disappeared. The foolish snake mistook the scent of a naga for that of a common forest snake. She thought about it. Did the foolish snake just try to call a naga to itself? She began to actually wonder about the small creature before her. Was he new to the forest? It seemed impossible for this creature to survive for as long as it had. It was hard for the great serpent to decide whether Eisen was brave or foolish. She was inclined to believe it was more foolish than brave, but she couldn't be certain. Eventually, after Eisen happily called out to the scent of a minor serpent, the great serpent flew into a terrible rage. The snake had to be foolish to think it had a chance to survive against even a weaker cousin of her species. She had grown tired of this game. It was fun at first, for a while. Slithering on the ground silently, keeping close enough to move quickly to cover if he turned around. Climbing a nearby tree, Eisen would pass near to signal the presence of another snake. It was fun while she kept the species of the snakes mundane. Now he was not even pretending to be wise about what he alerted to his presence. She was frankly tired of climbing and descending trees silently, and whatever this Eisen character was, she was tired of thinking about it. The great serpent responded to the clueless snake. "Young snake, it seems you have found me." The serpent hissed. Eisen could tell the voice was female, but he could not make out a single word. The hiss was coarse, grating, and loud. It sounded like a harsh, guttural rasp that scraped against his ears, like sandpaper dragged across steel or nails on a chalkboard. It hurt to listen to the thing behind him. Eisen hissed in fear and turned. A beautiful black great serpent with menacing orange and yellow spots slithered gracefully down the nearest tree. She was long, dangerous, and beautiful. The great serpent appeared to dance its way to the roots of the tree, slithering closer, until its head emerged from the shade. The obsidian serpent's eyes hit the light and shimmered like molten gold. The eyes themselves, on further inspection, were anomalous. Green irises like Eisen's master claimed he had. Jade emeralds floating on a sea of gold. The serpent bent light unnaturally. It was darker near her. The serpent correctly interpreted the snake's stunned silence as an inability to understand her words. She fell completely silent, then spoke in a calm, near whisper to the limited creature. She could not make her message any simpler than this. If he somehow still failed to comprehend, she was going to start tearing him apart until he understood or died. "Snakes in these forests have been speaking of you. I know this is not your magic. It is the magic of a human." Again, Eisen was overwhelmed by the monstrous serpent and her voice, but this time he could hear her words. Her words were not entirely audible to him, but he got the context through the words he could hear. "Yes, I have a master who can speak to snakes. He claims to have been able to speak to snakes since he first met us." The predator stopped imagining how to tear the young snake to pieces. Something the baby said jolted her memory. Humans could use rituals or potions to mimic their language, but these methods would never work on a non-magical snake. Only true speakers could communicate with mundane snakes like this one. Was this one a magical snake after all? She scented offensively toward the smaller snake, clearly indicating that she did not trust his words, while also probing the magic that lay upon him. Once again, she felt no magic within the snake. The magic was upon him and around him. He was in contact with a human. It was possible the baby was not lying to her. It was at this moment that Eisen began to question his decision to venture into the forest in search of others of his kind. Even with his limited time in the pet shop, he understood that it was considered rude to scent another snake so obviously. There was something undeniably alien about the serpent before him. He decided to end the silence by asking his own question. "You are a very large and beautiful snake. What's your name?" Visions of a shredded garden snake flickered through her mind. Twice, 3 times, she stopped herself. Eisen's mangled corpse appeared in different corners of the clearing, blood soaking the earth where he now was. The serpent's gaze locked onto the tiny snake before her, her fangs aching to sink into his scaly flesh. She looked away. She looked at the trees above while continuing to probe at the magic around the snake. She could not look at Eisen without launching into an attack. She needed self-control. She was not very good at self-control, but she needed to find some. She fought the primal urge to chase the little snake through the forest, tear a piece from him, let him flee, then catch him again. It was not easy. In that instant, she could hear the blood running through Eisen and could practically taste it. To be called a snake by a snake was intolerable. Did he not see the difference? She, for the fourth time, fought her immediate instincts. The serpent's hatred of inferior beings ran deep, and nothing was more demeaning than being reduced to such a label. Pride demanded the immediate death of the offending creature, but she tamped down the impulse. The chance of meeting a true speaker was worth the indignity. The serpent kept scenting the smaller snake, drawing closer as Eisen drew backwards. Yet another game the young one seemed eager to play, and it was making her irrationally angry. She was losing it. After another retreating move, she once again fought the urge to maul the smaller snake. She froze the snake. His fear turned to terror as the serpent moved closer and closer, her tongue making rapid, darting movements. The young snake tried to follow the movements of the larger predator. Only his eyes moved. He was frozen as the serpent drew closer and closer. The gold and green eyes of the serpent were massive, and soon it was all he could see. Eisen was terrified. The serpent looked away from him, over his tiny head. This scared him more than anything else. I am not a snake, I am a great serpent. You are a snake, the others are snakes. You will learn the difference between us soon. The hissing was at her normal intensity once again, and after her words, Eisen descended into total panic. His instincts were underdeveloped, but he knew with certainty that this was the end of his life. He had no other options, no way to avoid this. He would beg for his life if he could and promise to never return. The young snake could not understand the serpent's voice. She was hurting him with her voice. He wished he stayed with his master. He wished he was back at the store. The great serpent advanced on the snake slowly, drinking in the hints of magic left behind by the wizard. The story was too good to be true. A hatchling, proficient with a wand, and able to use magic at such a young age. This human could speak to her without the use of a potion or ritual. She decided to inspect the boy for herself. She knew the scent of his magic. It was diluted on the snake, but she knew the source. The serpent began to slither away towards the boy, but she remembered the insignificant snake she froze. The serpent turned towards her paralyzed victim and ignored the unpleasant smell of terror. Eisen's fear smelled like rotten fruit, entirely unpleasant to be around. She was no longer hungry and no longer interested in displaying the corpse of the snake for her followers to see. She was no longer interested in her followers or anything other than the hatchling. Eisen died, unable to move or cry out for his master, a forgettable death for a forgettable creature. The serpent sensed the owl once again. It struck her suddenly. She was not the only one racing toward the boy. The area where the boy resided was warded, and the owl had likely followed the residual magic, clinging to the snake in order to find him. It was a clever plan, but the serpent was unwilling to share her young wizard with the owl. Like Eisen, like the trio of witches, and like the many other snakes that had dared to rise against her, the owl simply died. The great serpent slithered unimpeded toward Harry's tent. The heavy warding that had obscured the owl's ability to locate Harry could not begin to interfere with any of her methods of finding her latest target. Hours after Eisen's death, Harry settled down to sleep. It was late, nearly 9 o'clock at night. Raken had been expected to return for him 3 hours earlier. Harry was anxious. He was out of nutritional potions and too afraid to leave for the capital in case he missed Raken's arrival. Though independent due to his upbringing in the orphanage, Harry was truly afraid that Raken had forgotten him. He did not want to cry. He fought back tears as the minutes continued to pass. The forest had not felt unsettling when Eisen was nearby. The snake was not always present, but he always returned at night. Harry believed this was because he tended to change locations before falling asleep each evening. Eisen would always find him, and with him there, the forest had not seemed so frightening. By the time he went to sleep, Harry had both questions and genuine fears. The serpent was afraid as well. She had raced to the boy with almost no thought of extracting real information from the snake. She did not know the boy's name. She knew nothing about him. If he was a true speaker, this encounter had to be perfect. She could sense the sadness radiating from the young boy and had observed him for hours. He spent nearly the entire day reading and practicing magic. For some reason, his sorrow seemed to deepen as the day drew to a close. The great serpent could not understand why she cared so deeply about his emotional state. She wanted to protect him. She wanted him to stop feeling sad. Empathy was a foreign sensation to her, and she suspected that the boy's nature as a true speaker drew her in. She could grow alongside this wizard. He was productive, disciplined, and possessed a clear thirst for knowledge. She could grow and learn with this wizard. He spent his day productively and had a keen thirst for knowledge. She sensed the magic within him. He was shockingly powerful for his age, but he was unused to magic. The great serpent reflected on her previous dealings with witches and wizards, those who craved power and would do anything for it. She did not feel the obsession for power from the young boy. He did not crave power, did not desire much of anything. A perfect blank slate, but far younger than any wizard she dealt with previously. The ties of fate and magic wrapped around the boy tightly. Somehow, this wild boy who sacrificed minor spirits in the Albanian forest was a most promising prospect. It was curious how the water sprites avoided his tent, even though the sounds of their magic were almost deafening within it. The forest-dwelling boy was quite knowledgeable about rituals. She filed those thoughts away for later. It was almost time. Night was falling. The boy's breathing had begun to slow. Fortunately, upon entering the tent, she had seen what she assumed to be his first name, Harry. She was among the rare magical creatures capable of reading and understanding human languages. It would be humiliating if Harry was not his true name. A mistake like that could jeopardize her chances of forming a bond. Still, she dismissed the thought. The serpent had to remain confident. The serpent was ready to meet this remarkable young wizard for herself. She could help Harry grow. For the first time in centuries, she felt genuine excitement. She knew he could sense magic. Magic called to magic, and she could feel how sensitive he was to it. But the paradox remained. If he had not yet realized that he could sense magic, then he would remain blind to it. It was a strange catch-22 she had often observed in wizards. She only hoped that Harry would not panic or reject her presence. If she could not have him, no inferior creature would. Not 3 minutes after Harry went to sleep, she made her move. Something immeasurable woke Harry up, a small pressure change in the tent, a barely noticeable change in the ambient sound in the tent. Harry Potter reacted to the pressure change instantly. He still had nightmares about the raid on the shack. Harry reacted instantly. He still had nightmares about the raid on the shack. The chaotic scramble to evade magical law enforcement had made him acutely sensitive to disturbances in his surroundings. He remained under the covers, his eyes fixed on the open flap of the tent. All appeared well. Moonlight reflected on the slow-moving river outside. There were no intruders, but there was still no sign of Raken. His eyes swept the tent interior, alert. The aura raid had begun with a sensation just like this, the faint shift in pressure. The serpent congratulated herself on the subtlety of her approach, but she was puzzled by the boy's fear. She had revealed only her magic, without threat or deception. Magic called to magic. Her intentions and presence were open to him. She slithered back and forth until she found what she thought was an intimidating and impressive pose and waited, radiating magic around her. When she woke Harry up, she had not anticipated his panic. Her first thought was that Harry somehow knew exactly what she was. The scent of fear nearly triggered her own. She did not react well when she was scared by something. Harry did not know it, but the serpent was just as frightened as he was. Not of him, nor of any wizard, but of the possibility that this meeting would fail. Eventually, she decided to speak to the visibly scared boy. "Hello, young wizard." The most beautiful sound Harry had ever heard came from above, almost directly above him. Harry heard it as a pleasant chime of hissing and cooing, like a cross between a songbird and a snake. The voice reverberated slightly within his head. It was calm and soothing, and for a moment he wondered if an angel had come for him. Harry looked up and saw the largest animal he had ever encountered lounging across the metal support bars of the oversized tent. She was over a meter long. Her sleek, jet-black scales shimmered with scattered orange spots that glowed like embers in the dim light. Her head dipped low, inching toward him, her eyes locking onto his. Harry could not look away. The orange markings along her back pulsed gently, drawing him in. The faintly bioluminescent patterns, small orange dots in random arrangements, were spectacular. The serpent was magically significant. She possessed a colorless, almost transparent sheen that shimmered faintly around her. Harry noticed a subtle dimming in the tent, centered entirely around the obsidian serpent. The effect was strange, making the space feel darker, but only in the area surrounding the serpent. He felt at ease. He knew this visitor meant him no harm. She was not here to kill him. There was a mutual, shared trust between the serpent and Harry. There were no compulsions from the serpent, no tricks. These feelings were real, and there was no doubt in Harry's mind of that fact. This was the bond between a true speaker and a serpent, the bond Eisen was unable to have. "Harry, talk to me. I want to hear your voice." "Hello, you're a very large snake. Are you comfortable up there? I'm waiting for Raken to come pick me up." Somehow, being called a snake no longer mattered. Somehow, the cold metal support bars beneath her held no significance. She could have danced with delight. It was exactly as she'd been promised. The boy could speak to her not through potions or rituals, which twisted human speech. Most magical snakes couldn't sense the difference. The distortion simply faded into the background for them. But she felt the difference and lashed out violently after prolonged conversions. Harry Potter, he sounded absolutely divine, a natural speaker, someone she could truly communicate with. She was confused about this Raken person, but her serpentine instincts to manipulate things to her favor won out. She decided to lie to the boy, to foster the trust a little more. She knew this boy did not cast the wards around this tent. She guessed this Raken person was responsible. "I was wondering who cast the wards on this tent. The wards were very well built, made to keep untrustworthy people away from it. Unfortunately, it failed in the case of Eisen." Harry immediately recognized that she was lying. Raken was many things, but he was not a capable wizard. The first seeds of doubt began to take root. It seemed natural for a serpent to lie, but if she was not careful, she would drive the already trusting young wizard into suspicion. The serpent sensed the flicker of suspicion from the young wizard and cursed her foolish words. She hoped the young boy would smoothly move past her lies, and luckily for her, he did. "How do you know Eisen? Is he a friend of yours?" "Eisen led me right to you. He abandoned you." There was no dishonesty in her statement. She could tell that Eisen had abandoned him. The harsh truth, combined with her honesty and the bond they shared, helped Harry accept it. "Well, are you here to be my friend? What's your name?" "I am Nahezra." Nahezra vibrated with magical energy as she pushed power into her words, invoking her own name and implanting it into the young, impressionable boy. The water sprites became quiet at this display of magic. For as long as he lived, he would never forget her name. She could have saved the magical effort. Harry was never going to forget a second of their first meeting. "My name is a derived name of a greater demon that took the form of a serpent. I myself am a powerful descendant of this demon, Nahizral." Invoking the name of her ancestor, Nahizral, the Nahizral who was once divine-born but now coiled in the pit. The structural beam began to vibrate, and the entire tent started to shake. Books fell off their shelves, the magical map went haywire on the other side of the room, and the lights flickered and dimmed. The magical core of the tent was compromised. No wizard alive could ignore the fearsome magical energy emanating from the area, yet the serpent was not its source. Harry, however, was fixated on the declaration that he was speaking to some sort of demon's descendant. The entire tent radiated with a strongly alien, demonic energy of a kind not felt in centuries. Harry's eyes were huge now. No human had ever sensed magic like this before. It was different. This flow of the magic was coiled around the serpent, but was not of the serpent. Similar to how Nahezra was able to detect the subtle differences between Eisen's magic and his master's. This magic wasn't of Nahezra. This magic came from invoking her ancestors. The serpent, considered to be a minor demon herself, used this power to continue the invocation of her ancestors' magic. It took great control of her body to stay on the wildly bucking support beam. The young wizard looked afraid and entranced, staring up at her with an awestruck expression. Nahezra wanted to feel the magic coursing around her forever. She wanted to make this magic sing to the highest peaks. Nahezra paused for dramatic effect, invoked a greater being, ignoring a century of hissed warnings and entire libraries on the topic of soul magic and theology. It was one thing to invoke a fallen ancestor. It was another to invoke the name of a current divine entity, one of the angels that had not fallen to temptation. There was something happening here that Harry Potter would reflect on many times in his life later on. Nahezra and her lack of self-control was a problem, and invoking her ancestors was another problem. The real problem was that Nahezra did not understand what she was in or where she was. Magical humans could not know what they did not know. Magical creatures could not know they were missing knowledge. Nahezra believed she was in a normal, common tent. Any human above a certain age would notice the spatial anomaly immediately. Magical creatures could not. Nahezra may be exceedingly powerful, but she was still bound by the laws. To understand she was in a magically enhanced tent, she would need to be able to process several higher-level concepts completely foreign to her. The reckless magic usage was something any wizard would avoid, especially with the frantic shaking of everything around them. This demon went by a different name before his fall, formerly known as the first and greatest sword of Paimel. One of the two living occupants of the tent felt a strange feeling. It started with a dull buzzing in Harry's head, slowly growing louder. Harry turned his head over to where the magical map once was. The magical display kept track of tent's status when not being used as a map. Sadly, there was no more magical display. There was no more wall. The magical map and the entire yellow wall were missing. Where the wall once was, there was nothing. It hurt to look at in a similar way that it hurt Eisen to hear Nahez's voice. In both instances, the snake and the young wizard were unable to process what they were exposed to. He could almost, very faintly, hear screaming. Harry was not prepared for this interaction with the void. At 3 in the morning, several hours after the tent collapsed, Harry finally woke up. He woke up in what felt like soft grass. The pain he felt was unbearable. He just lay there, softly moaning. He opened his eyes and immediately closed them again. The migraine was intense. He had no idea how long he had been asleep. He was in total agony. He kept his eyes closed and gingerly rubbed his head. He could hear the slithering of the serpent, and he could feel the concern in her hisses. Harry didn't know it yet, but he was quite lucky to be able to have a migraine. He was quite lucky to have anything. In an extraordinary case of luck, Harry's mind survived the entire ordeal. The human mind was not meant to process absolute nothing. The pocket reality of the tent broke, and the safeguards pulled all living creatures out of it. This brief experience, looking into the void for less than a fraction of a second, was much more than any human had the ability to observe without breaking into infinite pieces and shattering into that same void. The mental cracks were there. He would never forget this experience. His use of alchemical potions to enhance his memory would never let him forget things that should be. The names of the fallen, and in the case of Pamel, the name of the still divine, were fine to learn in a purely theoretical context. These names were not the true names of these beings. These names were the translations of the original names, able to be understood by mortals. The power these names had was a fraction of the true power of the original names, which itself was a tiny fraction of the power these beings possessed. Invoking even the false, translated names, even by a magical creature, even without the use of ritual or sacrifice, risked great harm to the minds of those who were present and unprotected. Harry was certainly unprotected, and he was physically below the invoker. The names held power in a ritualistic context, and it was almost as though the serpent had made him the total recipient of the invoked names. Under the correct circumstances, the power drawn out by the serpent could be given over towards Harry, strengthening his hold on magic immensely. This was not something Nahezra was aware of, and not something she wanted. The magic flowed over the young wizard like a torrent, nearly drowning him in an incomprehensibly thick stream of magic. The final threat to his mind came from a mundane and non-magical context. When the tense pocket dimension collapsed, and reality attempted to force its normalcy on the area, everything went flying. Unreality and reality merged and mixed. The magically expanded tent went through a series of unnatural pressure changes. Everything had its place until it simply didn't. Unfortunately for Harry, he was just another passenger on this trip through non-being. The great serpent was as well, but she did not move from her position. Reality simply failed to adjust her position without her allowing it. She stayed upon the metal bars, even hovering in empty space as the metal bars were flung away from the walls of the tent. The magic safeguards in the case of a collapse were meant to get all living creatures safely outside of the tent as soon as possible. In the first instant it was possible. The magic activated correctly. Harry had both never experienced the void and had at the same time. Harry was flung into the grass violently, rolling over twice and coming to a stop near the bank of the river. The great serpent simply slithered out of the remains of the tent, completely unfazed. Her first moment of awareness was being next to Harry. Nahezra had a generally pleasant time inside of the tent. To her, she had simply invoked two dead names, and suddenly she was outside in the grass next to the unconscious boy. Neither animals nor muggles had the ability to understand what had happened between the invocation and the current instant in the grass. It is for this reason Nahezra felt no pain, retained no memories, and simply assumed the young boy had chosen to lay in the grass and she had arrived next to him. It was the easiest explanation to understand, so that was the one she went with. Harry had simply decided to sleep under the moonlight. She scented once again, ensuring the young wizard was breathing. Satisfied, she let him rest and stayed near. It was silly of him to sleep outside without a tent, but she would teach him better. For now, she'd just keep watch, making sure nothing harmed him. Her knowledge of children was entirely around their taste and their general qualities in rituals. It was for this reason she knew Harry was much too old to be of any potent use in a ritual. She knew the younger a wizard, the more careless they were. She had a very poor estimation of the mental abilities of wizards of any age, so she guessed that while Harry seemed eager to learn, sleeping outside and in the wilderness was going to be one of the least odd things from the young child. She supposed this was why Harry interacted with magical spirits without using proper precautions. She could see it clearly. The water spirits never left the wizard. She could not sense the initial signs of spirit manifestation from the river, nor could she sense any malicious intent from the water spirits despite the boy eliminating so many of them. From her knowledge, the boy had to be both traveling between different locations and using a water totem, which implied a strong knowledge of the nature of magical spirits. However, he did nothing to protect his mind, curiously enough. Even stranger, the boy had mysterious potions running through his system. The potions seemed to affect his mind somehow. By her guess, they warped his perception of himself. The serpent estimated that the boy may not look the way she thought he did. In the hours while Harry Potter slept, the Great Serpent identified several potion complexes running through the boy's blood. She thought it was important to know the relative health of the boy. Harry Potter had a potion to correct his eyesight, improve his memory, and potentially change his appearance. This was all well and good, but each of these potions was far too concentrated, especially the potion that changed his appearance. Nahezra's gaze lingered on Harry's sleeping form, her mind working overtime to understand the implications of the potions she'd detected. The concentrated bruise coursing through his veins seemed a recipe for disaster, and she couldn't shake the feeling that his very biology was a ticking time bomb. It was for the first time the serpent felt incomplete instead of powerful. Her ability to detect injuries and sense were used for tracking and eliminating prey. She could not diagnose or identify problems in this wizard. She needed to get better, and she needed a way to figure out what the water spirits wanted with Harry. The water spirits were a concerning thing. Mental manipulation was one of the strongest attacks possible by magical spirits of their kind. They were intangible, weaving around Harry's head. She could sense them in a limited fashion, but could not expel or repel them. It was yet another thing the Great Serpent was concerned about. Nahezra catalogued the relative state of the boy and came to a total rest next to him. She planned her next steps carefully. She wanted to take young Harry for a checkup. It was good to have a baseline for the normal health of her new student. What she needed was a medical baseline from wizarding medicinal experts. She wanted to know what normal was for her student. If the healers identified normal for Harry, she would associate that with normal, and from there, she would know if there was anything wrong in the future. As for sensing Harry's emotional states, she supposed the absence of fear and sadness could be joy. She could sense pride, obsession, and jealousy in humans just fine, but she did not want Harry to feel those emotions in her presence. Those emotions led to destruction, a destruction she usually helped cause. When he woke up, she heard the moans of pain, and she immediately went back to scenting the wizard and the magic around him. "Little wizard, why do you sound like you are hurt? What is wrong with you?" Once again, the serpent's words calmed him, but did not stop the pain. Harry barely moved his jaw and pictured the serpent in his mind to respond. "Why aren't you hurt?" Harry whispered, unwilling to speak any louder than he had to. The great serpent stopped her immediate first instinct to boast about her being powerful and thought about the question, really thought about it. Why would Harry think she should be hurt, and why did he think he was hurt? She thought very carefully about the events leading up to lying in the grass. It took her a very long time to come up with a possible answer, and it required her to leave his side. The great serpent slithered around to peer at the remains of the tent. The yellow tent was not disassembled as she previously thought. It was torn apart. It was also tiny. The tiny metal support bars stuck out of the collapsed tent strangely, and she knew just by examining one that there was no way she could put her full weight on those bars. And yet, she remembered being within a tent with a bed and a magical monitor and bookshelves. She remembered being on those same metal bars, above Harry's bed, high above the ground. It seemed perfectly natural to her when she entered the tent, even after stalking the tiny tent for hours. Even after making notes about the tiny tent, and if it would be possible for her to fully be inside the tent with her immense bulk. With several leaps of logic that were pure genius, she guessed why she was unable to remember what her master clearly did. When the pocket dimension created by magic fell, we must have been subjected to extreme forces. I am ultimately unable to experience things I am unable to comprehend. I have experienced what you experienced, but I will not be able to remember. However, I do not detect any injuries from your person. My entire body hurts. I feel like I was trampled. Nahezra did not detect any breaks, any tears, any bleeding. This wasn't a foolproof magical detection, but should be perfectly accurate given the fact she was next to the wizard. The serpent had many different snapshots of Harry at this point, from their first meeting to their time in the grass. If he was injured now, it would suggest that Harry was injured when they first met. Harry's physical state was practically identical as far as she could tell. She did not have a strong understanding of human biology, but she was quite certain this was some side effect from the tense situation. She cursed the Raken person Harry mentioned earlier. If the wizard knew how to create tents, this would not happen. Nahezra, of course, was not able to comprehend that she was the singular reason for the failure of the tent. Nahezra pushed power into her words. If the wizard had the ability to ignore compulsions, this would not work. You are not injured. Just like that, with one overpowered compulsion, Harry's pain disappeared. This was another possible crack in the mind of the young wizard, another fault line that was fit to rupture at any moment. Before the compulsion, she knew the chance of mental stress to be high. In a very typical move for a magical creature, she ignored a problem she could not comprehend, sticking a magical band-aid on Harry's mounting problems. Deep down, she instinctively knew she needed to get Harry Potter to a medical facility and fast. She evaluated the best possible line of conversation to convince Harry to leave the forest. Now, the exact nature of the mental strain was not something she was aware of. She did some quick deductions. Harry believed he was in pain when he was physically fine. She appeared next to the boy in the grass right after the tent fell over. This suggested to her that, in the instant between the magic failing and her appearance in the grass, the boy was trapped in some sort of unimaginable magical complex. This reasoning would be very easy for even a small wizarding child to follow, but it required some extraordinary brain power and imagination on the serpent's part. She evaluated her next steps carefully. She would need Harry to carry her, which meant she needed to weave compulsions to hide her weight. She kept track of the future compulsions and began planning them. There was an underlying fault line somewhere that she needed to avoid. The boy had over-concentration potions running through his bloodstream even before the events of today. Harry's pain vanished, the headache dulled to a very manageable level. Harry moved his head and looked towards the beautiful serpent. She was enchanting in the moonlight. She was blending into the shadows of the trees. Her gold and green eyes were shining brilliantly back at him. Harry smiled at his new friend and sat up. Thank you, Nahezra. I live to serve. As a reward, will you possibly allow me to join you on your journey? Harry, still seated on the floor, gestured for the serpent to come closer. As the obsidian serpent slid over his pale hand, Harry lifted her front section, bringing her head to his eye level. He stared into her beautiful eyes, taking in the enormity of her size. Her head alone was roughly half the size of his own. Even just the weight of her head was substantial, giving him a sense of her massive build. I'm sorry, Nahezra, I don't have a journey. I live with Raken, but he hasn't come for me yet. I'm also not sure if I can keep you a secret. You're quite large, you see. Nahezra hissed, the sound unintelligible to Harry, but beautiful nonetheless, after a few seconds of deep thought and silence. I can coil around your body, under your robes. I'll coil around your torso several times and I can come to rest on your shoulder. Harry thought that this was a flat-out insane idea. He was holding only the front half of Nahezra. Most of her was on the ground, and she was exhausting to hold even like this. His arm was growing tired, but those eyes kept him entranced. He thought, at the very least, they could try it. It wasn't the strangest situation Harry had been in. Becoming a strange, half-human, half-serpent amalgamation under a cloak didn't crack the top 5. You are quite heavy. Are you certain I'll be able to move? She already knew Harry would have to carry her. She prepared for the constant magical drain that was to ensue. Of course, you will be able to. The serpent started twirling herself around the young boy. Once, twice, 3 times. Harry was wrapped in the coils of the serpent. He could barely stand. She was positively solid. The very tail of the serpent hung loosely off of him while the head was on his shoulders. He felt her tongue flicker along his shoulder blade. He expected the serpent to need more coils than she did. His hands were free, but he could not put them flat on his left side. Harry thought it was the coolest experience of his young life. Nahezra was solid. She clearly did not miss a meal. Young wizard, what do you think? It was here she subtly removed the weight from Harry's mind, small compulsions stacked and layered over each other. She felt less heavy each second. She knew she could not hide the weight from the boy, not all of her weight, but maybe just enough. Once again, she kept track of the compulsions she needed to lay, scenting with her tongue to keep track of the wizard's status. She had a very novice way of layering compulsions. She promised to improve her methods later. Harry took a few cautionary steps with the serpent after fixing his robes. It looked strange from the outside. The robes hid the body of the serpent well, but gave the appearance of a plump young wizard with a gaunt and thin face. It wasn't strange enough to raise serious questions. It wasn't too bad, all things considered. Harry kept walking slowly, testing his weight distribution. You feel like a constantly moving, warm belt wrapped around me. It feels good. I can carry you. I wish you'd stop flicking my neck with your tongue. It feels strange. Of course, I'll stop at once. She could not stop. She needed to be aware of her surroundings and the magic of the wizard she clung to. She ran another compulsion. She mentally counted them out. She was running too many at once. Far too many. She was not aware of her weight before she started her calculations. Harry stood under a tree, listening to the sounds of the Albanian forest. She peeked her head out of the mouth of his robe and looked out at the forest with Harry. You know, I've lived for over 5 centuries. Really, Eisen lived for only a few months. It's true, young wizard. I'm a very old and magically powerful serpent. I've lived with and among humans for a long time. Nahezra, what is the difference between a serpent and a snake? Snakes can be either magical or non-magical and are mundane creatures. Serpents are always magical and are the descendants of fallen demons. We are considered minor demons by most other magical creatures. Why are you considered minor demons? The great serpent was not ready for this conversation. Her past, and the wizards and witches in her time, would be something she discussed on her terms. The same reasons why boggarts and vampires are considered minor demons. Harry was not sure why boggarts or vampires were considered minor demons, but the serpent said this with a finality he was unwilling to press on about. You asked to join me earlier, but I don't know what to do. Raken hasn't come for me and I'm starving. I lost the reagent I came here for, and it's the middle of the night in the forest. Nahezra seized this opportunity to return Harry to his home. Master, you are not starving yet, but you will be. I can smell that you are not from this part of the world. Why can we not return to where you are from? Raken is in Albania. We can't leave Albania without him. Do you know where Raken is? Does he have a house that you know the address to? No, our inn was in Muggle, Albania. I'm not sure if it was even in the Albanian capital. I don't even know the name of it. I could return to France with Mattel and wait there. Nahezra was quite glad to hear that. She was angry that Raken left Harry alone in a death trap of a tent. She silently thought that if Harry didn't purchase the disloyal traitor Eisen, Harry would have died from some imaginary injury in the Albanian forest after the tent collapsed. She was not sure what she would do to Raken, but she was positive it was going to be bloody. I think you should return to your true home. What is the first place you called home? I'd rather die than return to the orphanage. They'd take you away, and I'd never see Raken again. He'll be caught the second he sets foot in England. Not to the orphanage exactly, but to England. Your gift is genetic in nature. It's very unlikely that you're a Muggle born. I wouldn't know. I know I was born in England and sent to an orphanage when I was young. Okay, let's go there. It's good to get you closer to your home. You said you didn't have a journey. This is now your journey. Nahezra, did you think it's safe to start the journey? I think it's early in the morning. Should we wait for daylight? Young wizard, I am with you. No creature in this forest would dare to harm you. I know the way. Harry and Nahezra ventured on their path out of the forest together, talking warmly and getting to know each other. Nahezra kept the magic flowing, observing the wizard's health very closely. For the first time in a very long time, Nahezra cared about something other than herself. It was the wild boy she found in a strange-looking yellow tent, a boy she could easily kill and consume. She could not bring herself to do anything to harm the child. She found peace in his words just like Harry himself did. Harry was growing weary. He did not get much time to rest, and she physically put a massive strain on his body. Nahezra kept track of this, spinning up another dozen compulsions to keep Harry moving. She had it all planned out. Keep Harry Potter awake long enough to get him to London, go to Gringotts, and find out the true nature of Harry. Once that was done, send Harry off to whatever passed as a wizard healer and reunite after his checkup. She was really hoping Gringotts would have some sort of Potter vault. She knew Harry must not have had any living family members, but she believed Harry needed medical attention. She was unsure about Gringotts and their policy on keeping living creatures within a vault temporarily, but she was not sure it was wise for Harry to appear in a hospital with a great serpent clinging to him.